Hey, it's Ken Kraetzer for CVSI Services. We're in Westwood, Massachusetts today. Have a chance to be at the Universal Wilde Company for their innovation event. Power up, energize your communication strategies with the latest print innovations. Have a chance to talk with one of their guest speakers. That is Marco Boar, Vice President of IT Strategies. Marco, good to see you. You had a very attentive audience today talking about the print industry.
Yes, the print industry is actually in much better shape than people think. At the end of the day, it's changing, and we're moving to what I would call a smart print industry, where a lot of the low relevancy, static material that often gets wasted because not all of it was used is shrinking. But at the same time, the ability to have more of a impact through relevant material, digitally printed, often very personalized, sometimes batch printed, is bringing power back to print. And it's becoming very apparent to people in the industry that while social media, email marketing is a really important part of the marketing mix, if you really want to resonate a message, you have to ultimately follow it up with print. So out of the 5 to 12 contact points that you have in touching a customer, print should be at least 3 of them.
And you mentioned that offset printing is still dominant, in some cases because the companies have very older presses that they're still using, but that the growing print companies are the ones that have implemented inkjet technology and can support very sophisticated digital printing.
Right. So as part of this change in the industry, offset's not going away, right? There's still huge amounts of volumes, and you couldn't build enough digital presses to replace all that offset volume. But what's happening is that as the low value, low relevancy output goes away, digital printing is coming in, and it's creating new products. It's enabling you to do things you couldn't do before. So now, for example, you could take a transaction statement and make it into a booklet along with stories about that particular demographic that you're trying to reach. So in effect, it becomes a direct mail piece and a transaction statement all in once, and you can vary it for every single customer.
Hey, you had a great thought about banks valuing being able to send transaction statements out because it gets them a chance to present messages to their customers every month, and with 98% readability. That's a great thought about print and statementing for the bank industry.
Yeah, so I believe it's a philosophical issue at the end of the day. So that 98% open rate is very real and it's very live. But what's happened is everybody wants to move to electronic payment, which means that having electronic delivery matters. But at the end of the day, if you really want to communicate with your customer once a month, and you want to be assured that they're going to see that first page, there's no better method than print. And so some of the very large banks that are out there are finding that having the ability to reach that customer with color, variable print has done amazing wonders for them. And then, on the other end of the spectrum, there's companies that look at these statements as a material safety data sheet. They're black, they're boring, there's lots of legal disclaimers. It has very low value. So those that are adopting the ability to have variable graphics, variable content, and use that as part of their marketing mix are doing incredibly well.
Yeah, our friend Joe Connolly at WCBS 880 Radio in New York would like your comment about annual reports, that startup companies are producing annual reports so that they can kind of publicize their successes and achievements. That's a neat observation.
Yeah, so one of the things that happens in life over time is one market goes away, something else pops up, and it sort of gets reincarnated. So what we're finding in annual reports is the big standard AT&T annual report, that's fading very quickly. But at the same time, many of the new startups are finding that if they want to be taken seriously and they want to get themselves ready to be sold at some point, having an annual report, now it might not be audited, but at the end of the day, having an annual report that tracks their history so they can go back to a potential buyer and say, here, this is what we've done for the last few years. Look at our product innovation. Look at our revenue trends. It's actually very powerful, and it's a relatively inexpensive way for a firm to make themselves look much bigger.
And I got to mention your comment about college text versus trying to study on electronic devices, tablets, and overwhelming distraction was the words that you used. That's a good observation. I still like print books.
Yeah, so we interviewed about 800 college students, asking them about trends in terms of reading and tablets versus printed books and all that. And the overall response was about 65% preferred printed books for a very simple reason. And you don't get that until you sort of talk to these guys, right? And that was, if you're reading things on a tablet or a phone, all these social media messages are pinging in, you're distracted. You can't concentrate. So if you really want to study something, a printed book and the ability to highlight, and yes, you can highlight on an electronic tablet, but to do it physically somehow connects better to your brain, and the retention is much better.
Yeah, I was reading through a historical text just last night, writing comments about an author I'm going to actually talk to very soon. Hey, we're at the Universal Wilde print agency right here in the Boston suburbs. What is, again, the key for marketers to use print effectively, get into using digital marketing, and to build campaigns in print that supplement and complement what they may be doing through other media?
So to sort of finalize the wrap-up, it's basically you've got to use print very smartly. It's part of the marketing mix. It's part of all the other programmatic things you might be doing. And when you talk about programmatic, what digital print in particular allows you to do is you could send out much smaller quantities, measure the response rate, follow up with different offers to those who responded, those who didn't respond. And from a programmatic campaign, over the course of the year, you can keep on adjusting until you get your response rate to where you need it to be. So print is a really highly functional tool that is not going to go away. And the smarter we get about using it judiciously, the better off we're going to be.
And Marco, I just got to ask you, tell us a little bit about your company, a little bit about how you got into the print business.
Well, that will take another hour, but no. So I've been involved in helping to design the next generation of digital printing systems for about 25 years. So we work on behalf of the major printer manufacturers, trying to help them figure out what do they need to build, and if they build it, will they come, and is it sellable?
Very good. Martin Boar of IT Strategies here in the Boston area. Great to chat with you here at Universal Wilde.
Great. Thank you, Ken.
Our pleasure. This is Ken Kraetzer for CBS Services. We're at Universal Wilde today in Westwood, Massachusetts.